for those listening, my name is Jay Perry, and I'm not the host of the Road Traveled podcast, but I am the host today. And today, my guest is the host of the Road Traveled podcast, Jesse Hunt. Jesse, welcome to your podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, Jay.
So before we get into it, a little backstory. I was fortunate enough to be on episode 6, I believe. There's a 2-part episode of your podcast.
Yep.
Thank you so much again for having me on.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah. And while we were doing it, I can remember, I think it was off camera, I was just looking at you and thinking like, man, this dude, from what I know of him, has an interesting story that needs to be told. And it's unfortunate that he's actually, I don't know if it's unfortunate, but it sucks that he's the host of it and asking people when like your story needs to be out in the public because it's probably pretty inspiring to a lot of individuals. So I remember saying to you, let's put you in the hot seat and get you interviewed. And, thankfully you agreed. So here we are.
It was a good idea. It was kind of
Yeah, I have no idea where this is going to go. I'm not any sort of like podcast host person. I don't know what I'm doing here. So this is all new to me, and let's see what happens. I think a lot of people know a little bit about your life, but there's facts that I don't. And I really wanted to research who you were before this, but then I stopped myself and I'm thinking like, why don't I use the podcast to have a conversation with you to figure out who Jesse Hunt is? So Jesse Hunt is from Burlington, from what I know.
That's all you need to know.
That's it.
No, that's where I was brought up in Burlington.
And before we get into the whole kidney thing,
Mm-hmm.
Who was Jesse Hunt before all of that? Growing up in high school, you mentioned playing in a band. Like, who is this guy?
Oh man, excuse me. Getting into it here. It's tough because it's interesting because a lot of the stuff that happened before the whole kidney thing seems like a very distant memory. Maybe that's just because I'm old. Maybe it has nothing to do with the kidney thing. But yeah, definitely, it's interesting. Before I got into filmmaking and doing what I'm doing now, my main pursuit and what I thought I wanted to be was a full-time musician. I wanted to be in a touring band. At least, the tail end of high school.
Right.
That's kind of what I identified as at that period of time. High school was an interesting time for me. And it's interesting. I just shot a short film about this subject, reflecting on people that had just graduated, reflect on people that had graduated high school 10 years ago. Their 10-year reunion was coming up. And so we kind of explored what it was like for people 10 years later, what had changed in those 10 years. Anyways, that's a story from a different time. High school was interesting. I think I'm a late bloomer, and I really didn't.
So why didn't the music thing happen?
Being a musician is very difficult.
Yep.
I don't think I was ever very talented at it. I think I just liked the look of the lifestyle more than. I didn't understand what it meant to have a career, whatever that may be. And that's not belittling musicianship as a career, because there are some people that are very good at it, and the talented people, good on you. Wasn't for me. And I kind of stumbled into filmmaking a little bit. I got into music videos and got to work with some very talented people and saw what that world was like. And my attention just kind of shifted very quickly.
So you wanted to go from in front of the camera to behind the camera.
Yeah.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
You guys were playing shows all the time, or how was that working?
Yeah, it wasn't all the time. We had a good stretch of touring from Burlington to Oakville.
Yeah.
That's about it though. Hamilton sometimes.
Do I know the band?
Life and Sound. It was like
Yeah,
it was Sigur Rós meets Radiohead meets Coldplay.
Yeah, okay. I sounds very familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately and unfortunately, I know that whole industry, and it's very cutthroat. But looking back for myself, I think that I have a lot of positives that have come from that era of my life, playing the band, which I didn't know were positives until, a few years ago. Do you feel the same way? That was it a waste of time trying to be a rock star, or can you bring something to now from it?
100%. very important thing to go through in my mind. You learn how to be creative, and you learn how to collaborate with other people. Being in a band that is that you're taking, at least I was taking seriously, and everybody in the band at the time was taking it seriously. But when you start playing more shows and stuff like that, it's almost like running a small business, right? Because there is being money exchanged, albeit they're very minimal amounts of money. But excuse me. But you learn how to manage certain things, and so I will say that learning how to make those deals, collaborate with other creatives, other musicians, really did come into play with what I'm doing right now. I would say I learned a lot from it. Yeah,
for sure. And you feel like that's what led you to wanting to go to film school?
Not necessarily. Like I was around the same time that I was doing that. I had linked up with one individual specifically. His name is Chris. He was doing a lot of Much Fact music videos down here in Toronto. So what that is, when Much Music was a thing, they would fund a lot of up and coming artists' music videos. Right. And so he was doing a lot of that, and he was directing them and he was shooting them. And I got to assist him on a bunch of different things. So that opened my eyes to a whole new, this world that I didn't know existed. That, film school is very different from being on a film set. And so I was doing one thing, it's kind of like, oh, this is still kind of school. Not sure if I want to do this. And then all of a sudden I was in that and I saw what it could be. I saw the creativity that was involved in it. I saw the people that were, involved in it, got to know some of those people. And it was like, whoa, this is possible. I can do this. And honestly, there was no looking back after that.
So you hop on a music set as an assistant.
Mm-hmm.
How do you even get your foot in the door to be that assistant, and why would they take you on, and how valuable do you think that hands-on experience was, say, versus sitting in a classroom?
Super valuable. So this is kind of like mixing a few stories at the moment. So what had happened was I got accepted to a 1-year graduate film program at Sheridan College called Advanced TV and Film.
No, to cut you off for a second, do you have to submit any sort of portfolio for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And back in the day, were you just making it on like mini DV cams and stuff?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I had a few.
You still have that video, the portfolio video?
I think I do. Yeah. I had made some videos for my band at the time and stuff like that.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, it's out there. I've seen it. But the way it went down was I got accepted in this program 2 months in. Is when I got diagnosed with kidney disease.
Right.
So I ended up having to drop out of school because I couldn't keep up with that schedule.
Yeah.
But instead of going to film school, I started working in the industry because around the same time I had linked up with this other director that I was assisting. He lived in the same city. He lived in Burlington. So I was able to go hang out at his house and kind of learn from him, and then go out on set with him and help him set up his camera. He bought one of the first Red Ones way back in the day. So like it was like new technology that not many people had access to. I was handing him lenses and so close to all of this stuff. So was
this your first experience with dealing with the DP, dealing with the director?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like some of the stuff you do today was based on what they did back in the day?
Probably.
Or have you changed significantly to your own style?
I think I've changed significantly, but I do, if I sat down and really thought about it, I'm sure I could find things that I attribute back to those days. But part of growing as an artist that I have realized more recently than I have in my whole career, which has been, almost 8 years now of doing this, that you have to develop your own style, and that takes time. And many influences go into that. So I'm sure that, working with him back then, I'm sure there are things that I do today that were initially influenced by that scenario.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's super, super important for people to know and realize that how valuable that time is actually doing hands-on work.
It's so important.
Yeah.
If you want to go to school, film school, whatever it is that you want to do, go for it, go nuts.
Yeah.
But it really comes down to, and we're in a different time period now where people realize that hands-on experience is probably, is just as valuable as studying books and stuff like that, right? So, but back when I was in high school, it was still very That wasn't a huge thing just yet. It was maybe just coming into fruition a little bit more. But, the type of learner I am is very hands-on. I need to be there. I need to see it happening. I can't read it in a book that doesn't do it for me.
I think people that are looking at your work would be like, this is so much fun. Look at the stuff he's creating. Man, that life rules. Mm-hmm. But then if they were to come on set, they could, wow, this is a lot of work. Mm-hmm. Do I really want to get into this? Yeah. And I think that's very eye-opening to see how much actually goes in to creating, a 30-second, a minute commercial. Mm-hmm. And, we were talking off camera on the process it goes from shooting to editing to coloring to this and that I wasn't even familiar with, that I think a lot of people are probably very surprised at until they kind of jump into it. I want to be a director and that's cool, but not realizing what's going on in it. So I think it's people like yourself who are open to sharing information like that are going to help a huge generation of creatives going forward. Because yes, it is hard work, but those are just little roadblocks, right?
100%. There is one story. I remember one thing that that guy said to me. I remember driving home on the highway one day, and he said, you really got to love this industry to make a run at it. And at the time, it didn't really make sense to me. Now looking back, it makes a bit more sense to me. It's not all bad. It's realistically, it's like any career, any job. There's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. But taking the freelance approach where there isn't the steady paycheck, the steady lifestyle in general, you do have to love all of those things and all of the different elements that go into it. Which I can honestly say that I do. I can't imagine doing anything else.
Did you love music?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or did you love just the idea?
I think you're probably right in saying that. I think I love the idea more than I love music. Even today I don't listen to a ton of music compared to my friends. I do. I do love music, but it is not something that defines who I am.
It's funny. I realize that too, playing in a band for so long and doing some cool things. I look back and it's like, I wasn't playing guitar every night in my spare time. Yeah. I wasn't. And you hear about those musicians who are super successful. It's all they do. They're obsessed with the time off. They're writing music. They're recording. They're doing this. And it's like, yeah, you're right. I was in love with the idea of being a rock star and not actually putting in the effort to do it. And I think that going forward, even now, I love just creating images all the time, videos all the time, which I'm sure you're always, either writing, directing, doing something.
It's always, the wheels are always turning.
Yes. Yeah. So speaking creatively, I'd love to kind of jump back onto that a little bit later, but you mentioned something about your kidney and how you had to say goodbye to a kidney and get a new one in there. And for those listening, you went through quite the health scare. Yeah. And it was from a blood test, was it?
Yeah. So the story, I'll try to keep it simple for the sake of time. The story was I went to a doctor and wasn't a very nice man. Really talked down to me, made me feel kind of uncomfortable, made me feel really stupid about not knowing the answers to the questions he was asking. So I was just like, you know what, screw you, man. I'm out. Left, didn't go back to a doctor for 2 years.
Wow.
And then eventually my parents were like, well, why don't you go to our doctor?
Yeah.
We'll get you in. Cool. Went to that doctor. Very nice man. And he's like, okay, let's get a lay of the land. Going to do some blood tests, blah, 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 blah. Went off, did those blood tests and came back, and he sat me in the big room, the room with the comfy chairs. And I was like, oh, something must be up.
Something's up. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and he broke the news. And at that time, I knew what a kidney was. I just didn't know what it did.
And what was the news that he said to you?
It appears that you are in renal failure.
Yes, I don't even have any idea what that means.
Yeah, and he explained it as doctors do, the best that he could. But ultimately, there's something in your blood test, and it's different for everybody. But my blood work was reading the item is called creatinine.
Okay,
and so somebody our age, even older, the normal level for creatinine is anywhere from I think 80 or 90 to 110 at the highest. That's like a healthy creatinine level. Mine was reading at 695, which they equate to a percentage, and at that time was something like my kidney was working at, like, I think maybe between 10 and 14%. One of my kidneys had actually died. I'm pretty sure that they have come to the conclusion that for the majority of my life I'd been living off of one kidney. Somehow along the way they missed that one of my kidneys died, and then this other one started to shut down. And because I hadn't gone to the doctor in so long, I kind of missed every opportunity to stop that from happening.
Right.
So yeah, that's pretty much. They sent me to a specialist immediately and started going through the process. They tried to reboot it by pumping me full of prednisone, which is a steroid, a very common steroid.
Does that work sometimes?
Yeah, they use it. They use it for a lot of different things. This being one of them, and interestingly enough, so. There's lots of good things about this, but there's bad things about it too. And what happened was my hips seized up because of the high level of prednisone that I was on, and so they decided to take me off really quickly, like cut me cold turkey. And I actually went through a night of withdrawal, which was because it's such an intense drug. So it was enough to make me never want to like do any serious drugs.
Isn't it crazy how easily a doctor can come in and say you might die?
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's their job and there's no other way around it, but I don't know another profession that would be able to kind of say, oh, you might die, and here's the steps. And so you've got this renal failure and you need a new kidney. First of all, I'm going to play the idiot right now. And I guarantee there's some people listening that are in the same boat as me, and I'm doing this question for myself and them. What the heck does a kidney do?
Oh, man.
'Cause I have no idea. And do I have two?
Yeah, well, I have 3.
What?
Yeah, they don't take the old one out.
What?
Yeah. So I've got 3, two small raisin looking pruny things that are just like dead and gone, and then one good kidney. Because it's taking a kidney out is much more invasive surgery than putting one in. So
they just reattach it to some other tubes or veins.
Yeah.
Or something?
So you're.
I must sound like an idiot right now.
No. A lot of people don't know this. So your kidneys are kind of around the back and side kind of thing, and the new one that they put in, they actually put it on or around my pelvis area in the front.
It's in a different spot.
It's in a different spot.
Oh,
and so
man,
it all hooks, yeah, right? It all hooks up to the same thing. It hooks up to the bladder and the ureter and all that stuff. So it's just further down the line.
Okay. So does a kidney filter your urine?
Yeah. So the best way to describe it is your kidney is kind of like Grand Central Station. It regulates a lot of the levels in your body. So when your kidney's not working, your blood pressure's out of whack. Your your protein levels are all out of whack.
Yeah.
So I was on a very special diet because I wasn't filtering properly. A lot of toxins were making their way to my brain.
What was this making you feel like?
Like crap. By the end of it, it made me feel like I was constantly drunk, just because you're just in this cloud. You can't think straight. You're tired all the time. Those are really the only symptoms.
Right.
Extreme exhaustion. And that's the best way to, like, thinking back to those days. It's very hard. Those memories are like a dream.
Yeah. So you have this news. I now know what a kidney does. And what's next? What's the steps? The steroids not working?
Yeah. So they didn't work. I gained a lot of weight and got kind of hairy because of the high level of steroids.
Oh man, that story.
Yeah. Then they lowered it because they realized, okay, that we're not getting this kidney back. Now it's just about prolonging. So they're like, we don't want to put you on dialysis right away because you're young. That'll just get in the way of your lifestyle too much. So sounds good. Went about another year, as long as I could. And I actually went into the doctors and I sat down. I was like, I need to go on dialysis. I cannot function like this anymore. I just knew it was time.
Okay, round 2.
Yeah.
What does dialysis do?
Dialysis is a filtration system where it takes. So what they did is they put a central line in. So it was pretty much 2 tubes that went into my main artery in my neck, and I had them hanging out right around here.
For the whole time you were on dialysis?
Yeah, 6 months. They can put it in your arm for people that are doing long-term dialysis.
Yeah.
It's called a fistula. They put it in your arm, and they just kind of like, they can plug into it, and it's much easier.
Right.
But I think in they were trying to make it go as quickly as possible.
Right.
We were already going through the process of my dad getting checked out to see if he could be a donor. So pretty much what it did is like one line, they would take the blood out, it would run through these machines and it would filter your blood and then it would send it back in. And that was for 4 hours, 3 times a week.
Wow.
And as amazing as dialysis is, because it essentially keeps you alive, it's not great because it still makes you feel kind of like crap. I would go home after the 4 hours and just sleep for the rest of the day just because I had the worst headache. Because if you think about it, it's moving all kinds of fluids around in your body. It's, where there was once a bunch of toxins, there is no more toxins there for that short while. So it's great because it keeps you alive, but it's no way to live. And it's very tough on your body.
I've heard people having to do dialysis every day. Is that a thing?
Yep.
What kind of life is that?
It's tough. It's getting better because there's something called peritoneal dialysis or like take-home dialysis. So you can do these things at home.
Wow.
It didn't work for me. They tried, it just didn't work. But it's tough because at the time I was a very young person and I was only there for 6 months. But there were people that had been there for 20 years.
Yeah.
Coming 3 times a week or whatever it may be.
So you're mentioning your dad was getting tested to be a donor.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know this story a little bit. So he finds out he's kind of a donor. Is that how?
Yeah. So match-wise, he was a donor. But the issue was they don't take an organ out of somebody that's not physically fit. Not that he was unhealthy.
Okay, yeah.
He was, I think he had maybe 30 pounds extra on him. And they were just like, it's too risky. We can't do this. And so for the next 6 months or however long it was, he went on a very strict regimen of diet and working out, and he lost the 30 or 40 pounds extra that he was carrying around in order to become a donor, which was wild.
Love to have your dad on here and ask him that, because I can just imagine, the thought of him having these 30 pounds before, maybe trying a diet here and there, but not putting an effort into it. But now it's like, my son's sick and needs this. Yeah. The switch probably just went off, and it's like, I'm gonna lose those 30 pounds.
Yeah.
It's not a question of if it's gonna happen, but when. Kudos to your dad for that. What a great dude.
I imagine it was a little bit like, yeah, you're a match, but you're not healthy enough, or you can't do it. And it was a little bit like, oh yeah.
Yeah. It's like, give me a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And then ask me that question again when I look like Arnold Schwarzenegger and I come back.
And it's not that he was unhealthy. He's 6'3". He's tall like me. And, like I could put on 30 pounds and not look overweight or anything. It's just the body that we have. But just from like I think it just was affecting blood pressure levels and stuff like that. It just didn't put him in a healthy enough place to lose an organ, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to take an organ out of somebody. It's already very difficult on them. So
you can live with one kidney. Okay, so he comes back, he loses the 30 pounds, and then they say, you're not quite a match, or we found a better match. How does this story work? So tell us how it went after that. So
this is where it kind of gets interesting, and this is where I was when we were talking about it earlier. It's the emotional roller coaster of up and down kind of thing. And this was one of those things where we were kind of like, up at the top, and things were going well, things were feeling good. They had said, okay, yeah, you're healthy enough, you can donate. And then the doctor called and asked us to come in for a meeting. This was right around Christmas time, I think, or maybe just before.
Same doctor in the same room, couches?
No, this is now like an actual specialist.
Okay.
Yeah, this is my nephrologist.
Oh, a what?
Nephrologist.
That's a kidney specialist?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And he kind of brings us in. And he's like, we're just not comfortable enough. Like, it's just still too risky of a move. Like, there were some things that weren't a close enough match
in terms of like blood types and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think they're called titers or something. I don't exactly know what it was. Okay. But they just still thought it was too risky, and I get it. Like, why you don't want to take an organ out of somebody, put it in somebody, only to have it reject.
Yeah.
And then one person's down a kidney and the other person's still dying.
Yeah.
So I understand taking those steps, but like you could imagine that was a tough one. That was a tough break. I remember we both kind of like walked out of the
Well, how did they leave it? They just said, this is it. Look for another donor.
No. I guess I can't remember exactly. It was such an emotional blow. Like I remember vividly walking out. We were both in tears, but I don't really remember what the next stage was.
Right. But then, as fate would have it, there was an amazing stage.
Yeah. So,
and how did that come about?
Yeah. So my doctor was treating 2 other people that were going through the same process.
It's the same doctor?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And his distant, I think his wife's, no, his, I can't remember exactly what the relationship was, but it was like a distant cousin.
Okay.
Was going to donate a kidney to him.
Right.
And so my doctor was like, hey, I've got this guy that needs a kidney, and I've got his dad as a donor. And interestingly enough, he matches you that need this kidney, and this other guy, the guy that was going to donate to him, he matched me better than my dad did.
Dude, how wild is that?
Wild, mind-blowing.
Same doctor.
Yeah.
That donor matches you better. Your dad matches this guy better under the same roof.
It is a bit weird now, like after saying it and thinking about it, like how kind of wild that is.
Yeah.
And what, like, I wonder what the process was like of like pitching that idea, being like, hey,
right?
do you want to swap?
Like, I can't even fathom to think what the percentage of that happening, the possibility of that happening is.
Yeah, I think it's more, I think this kind of a surgery does happen quite often now, but I think it's more like across the country, registry based online.
Okay.
It's not like, hey, my other patient has this thing, you want to do a quick swap kind of thing. It's less in the same circumstance, in the same city, in the same hospital.
Right. So you're pretty familiar with the organ donor system, I guess, in Canada somewhat. So if somebody needs, let's say, a liver, and they're on a list, so I understand that list is they're next up when someone dies, they can get their liver, correct?
Sort of.
Or if somebody comes to them and says, no, you can have my liver, it doesn't matter where in the list they are. They can just decide to give them, or I guess you can't give a liver, say kidney.
Well, you can give a piece of your liver, yes.
Right. You don't have to be anywhere in place on that list if somebody just say, I want you to have that, right?
No.
Were you on a list as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
The thing is, and this is a very good fact to know, and this is at the time, it may be worse now. I assume it's worse now. It's always better to find a living donor. And the reason is in Ontario, and like I said, this was at the time, the waiting list for deceased donors is over 11 years.
11 years.
Yeah.
So you have to be sick to get on that list.
You have to be on dialysis to be on that list.
I know a lot of people who sign up for season tickets at a sporting event because the waiting list is like 15 years.
Yeah.
And in 15 years, they hope I'm going to have enough money when I get there. When I get called, I'm going to get these. You can't just put yourself on this list and hope in 15 years you might need it, right?
No, you got to be on
years.
dialysis, which is crazy. You can't just be sick.
How many people can live off of dialysis for 11 years?
You can live for a long time on dialysis.
And do people do that to wait out that list?
Yeah.
Dude, that's wild.
Yeah.
What's the fix?
The fix.
How do you fix that? I guess you can't, right?
Well, people are they are making more of a push to sign your donor cards to try and cut that down.
Okay, so more deceased donors.
Yes.
Right.
But also, it's tough because, you may say, consider being a donor, but it's very, it's tough to imagine giving up an organ, putting your life at risk for somebody that you don't know. So I think the more immediate and important fix is just making sure that you're signing your donor card.
Okay. I want to get into after because it's on my mind a lot, but I want to get to the story first. But remind me, or I'll bring it up, the after effects of the donor and how their life changes after giving it up. So your doctor says to you, crazy story, but hey, we've got a donor for you. Was it like, hey, he said he could have your kidney, but your dad has to give up his? Or was just the idea brought up?
No. So we knew about the paired exchange because, obviously in the beginning when they're like, you have to have a kidney transplant, you see all of the options. yeah, you know what all of the options are. So they're always on the lookout for those things. And so when my doctor called and told us this, of course it was a surprise. Holy crap, you found me a kidney and this is the circumstance. But we were familiar with the paired exchange program is what it's called. So that part of it wasn't too much of a surprise.
Interesting. So did you meet these people beforehand?
Not before, no. They keep you very separate floors of the hospital, separate wings of the hospital. Everything's very separate.
And you have to decide, okay, let's go for it. And all parties were like, I'm in.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then where was that surgery done?
Hamilton.
Interesting.
Pretty sure it was the first one in Hamilton to be done.
So was both surgeries done on the same day? I guess all 4 surgeries.
So in the morning, the donor goes in, they harvest the organ, they come out. In the afternoon,
harvest meaning they take it out of the person,
yeah,
and then they like put it on ice or something. Or is that just like you see in Hollywood or on TV
I'm sure
shows?
that they put it on ice.
And how long is it out of the person's body? Sorry, I'm just like super fascinated by this. How long is it out of the person's body before it goes into you?
Probably a couple hours, an hour, maybe a bit more. It's tough to say because I can't remember, and I was drugged. Like I was heavily drugged.
Yeah.
Have you ever had surgery before?
Yeah, I have.
And did they give you that stuff? Kind of like, okay, we're gonna make you feel better now because they know you're anxious or whatever.
Yeah.
Man,
I woke up in the operating room
Oh,
one time.
what?
Yeah, it was wild.
Mid surgery?
No, I think the surgery was done, but I didn't know that. I had a hernia repaired, and I woke up in the operating room. The doctors were just kind of hanging out there, and it was like, what's going on? Like, oh, there's a fire in the building or something like that. I'm like, okay, like, now what? And I remember getting so nervous because I knew how scared my mom was that I was going in for surgery and that I was supposed to be out in recovery in like, let's say 2-3 hours. And this was like hour 4. I'm like, you just got to tell my mom I'm okay. That's all I can remember saying, so drugged up. But yeah, I woke up in there and it was wild.
That's crazy, man. It's such a different state of mind. I remember when I woke up, I had some friends that were going to school down in the States, and like I called everybody in my phone book being like, I'm okay, I survived. My phone bill was massive that month.
That's amazing, man.
But like I don't even remember that crap. Like you're just so out of it.
When okay, so back to my other question is when a donor gives up a kidney, they now have 1 kidney to live the rest of their life with.
Yeah.
What happens to them? And the reason I ask is I've always thought, like, you see those things on the internet, you know, my brother, my sister needs a kidney, needs a liver, can you help out, sign up? What are the consequences if somebody gives up half of their liver? Are they never allowed to touch alcohol for the rest of their life? Is their life like so changed that you question whether you should have done it or not? Now, I think it's different when it's like blood. Like if any one of my family members needed any organ and I could give that to them, you do it in a heartbeat, right? So how has your dad's life changed and how has the other donor's life changed?
Yeah. It's tough because like you said, I don't think my dad would, regardless of what happened, I don't think he would ever regret his decision. I think that his recovery was tough. It's think of it this way. Like, first of all, taking a kidney out is a highly invasive surgery. His surgery was much more intense than mine. And then you're also taking an organ out of an otherwise healthy human being, something that they've, grown to be accustomed to their whole life. So there's always going to be a little bit of like, you're going to feel that. And then I'm sure age played a role. You know, he was an older guy. Can't remember exactly how old he was, but I think you just have to be aware of it. I think you can't just fall off the deep end as far as like, okay, well, back to eating like shit and not exercising or doing anything like that, because it's, the things aren't going to go well no matter who you are, but you're down an organ, so you got to be careful of that.
Is there anything he has to do different now than before?
No.
He still live. Your donor, how is he doing?
He's doing great as far as I know. Mike's a great guy. He's somebody I'm going to have on the podcast one day because he's a character. He's an interesting dude. And he's got a very interesting story also. Somebody gave him a second chance at life very early in his life. And ever since then, he's been kind of giving back and looking for ways to pay it forward. And this was one of those ways, one of these large ways. And he even continued to do it after he made this mission that he was going to swim across Lake Ontario to raise money for the Kidney Foundation. This is after the transplant. Didn't work out. He swam across Lake of Bays. He trained, hired a full team of trainers to help him train for this. Swam across Lake of Bays up in Muskoka. I was there. The thing kicked his ass, but he did it.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think from that point, the doctors were like, okay, no more of that. You got to take care of yourself now.
So you guys met?
Yeah. So we met a year after. They keep you separate until a year after, and then they're like, okay, do you want to meet? And so
Why do they keep you separate?
just in case something goes wrong, the kidney rejects and he gets pissed off, like they get pissed off or whatever,
Right.
it's just from like an emotional, exactly.
Yeah.
You just want to give yourself time to like settle into things and get back to normal.
How was it meeting him?
Surreal.
Did you cry?
Probably. I think my whole family definitely probably did. Yeah.
And the person that your dad gave the kidney to, did you meet?
No.
No.
Haven't met him, no.
Has your dad met him? No, eh?
No.
That's wild, man. Your dad's a good guy. He messaged me on Twitter, I think it was.
Did he?
Yeah, just to mention that he read the book and he liked it. So, dude, I said you're talking about a hernia surgery is the worst thing I've been through. And it's like, I can't imagine having a third kidney, which is kind of like pretty cool. But going through that whole thing.
It's interesting though, because you say that, and I agree with you. It was an intense time in my life and something that I have learned a lot from and probably made, defined who I am today, made me who I am today. But at the same time, like it's nothing compared to what some people go through. Like for example, your dad.
Yeah.
Or, that's one thing that I always said even when I was at my sickest point and people were kind of taking pity, I remember saying like, yeah, but people have it worse. I know I'm going to make it through this. Even if they didn't find a new kidney for me, I could still stay on dialysis for 20, 30 years and that would suck, but I would live.
Yeah. It's funny. I dislocated my shoulder 2 or 3 years ago, and I was in the hospital and super bummed out, right? Like completely depressed. I was supposed to go on a trip to Norway a few weeks later, and I was on Facebook and I seen that a 7-year-old girl, her cancer came back. And I'm here being super bummed out about a dislocated shoulder.
Yeah.
And this girl was about to fight for her life again. And that really changed my perspective on how little this little dislocated shoulder, they're going to pop it back in. I'm going to be inconvenienced for the next 6 months. It's going to suck. 6 months. So what?
That's all it is though, right? Inconvenience.
Yeah. So, how was your recovery, and has that changed? If you run into a situation today that's kind of a little frustrating, is it less frustrating? Because I think everyone gets frustrated, everyone gets upset and mad.
It's human nature.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been interesting. The last 7-8 years has been a lesson in patience and learning how to be patient, because classic, I want things and I want them now. I have career goals, I have aspirations, and I want them now. And I've had to learn to know it's really a long game. You got to be patient. And I think that probably played a role in teaching me that,
right.
Because nothing in the healthcare system moves fast,
right.
Especially something as big as this.
And how long does a kidney last for?
On average, 15 years.
So you have to get this again? Now, not to like add humor into this situation. So if you get another donor, do they put a fourth kidney in you?
I think that they remove
number 3.
Probably because it's more accessible.
I see. Oh,
It's
okay. So that's the
literally-
reason why they don't take the other ones out, because you got to move a bunch of organs to get to it.
Yeah, and they'd have to go like up and in, where this is like cut out, stitch, done.
Right.
And I'll show you the scar later.
Yeah. And I feel like every day that I don't want to say you're alive, but you're alive, science and technology is probably improving more and more, right? Yep. So by the time you need that 15, there could be an easier method to.
Could be getting a pig's kidney or something.
Yeah, that'd be cool, right?
Try it on me. I'm ready.
Yeah, or like maybe it's drugs then that keeps this one going, or something. And I think that's cool. So you've been through, quite the insane journey.
I will say this, that a lot of people after they have a kidney transplant, it's a very up and down, very rocky, and intense process to kind of find the right balance of anti-rejection meds and lifestyle and stuff like that. I have literally had zero issues with this transplanted kidney. My doctors say I'm boring. Like, if you do any research on like famous people that have had kidney transplants, like nobody has had a perfectly sound experience with it.
Right.
And for whatever reason, I have had absolutely no issues.
Crazy.
Just knocking on wood there just in case. But
yeah, it must be the beers, right?
the beers, yeah. A consistent diet of beer really keeps the kidney going.
Keeps the urine moving.
Yeah,
I guess.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so you've got this kidney in you. It's going well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you go back to film school?
No.
Why not?
I've just already been working.
So you were still working during the recovery?
Not the recovery necessarily, but while I was going through, that 2-year process where I was, after I got diagnosed to before I went on dialysis, and even while I was on dialysis, I was still working. Like on my days in between, I was still doing shoots.
Okay.
Very difficult to do because I was exhausted all the time.
Yeah.
But the first music video I ever did for a Hamilton band called the City Harmonic, I got the phone call while I was on dialysis, and I remember being so excited about it. I was hooked up on all these blood pressure machines, right? And I remember getting so excited about this call that all my alarms started going off, and the nurses ran over like, "Oh my God, what's happening? He's dying!" And I was just stoked. I got my first like paying gig as a music video.
Do you hate talking about this stuff?
No, it's good to remember because, it's been so long now that if you don't stop and think about it, it's very easy to forget that it even happened. My family and I talk about it a lot, not a lot, but like every once in a while we'll be like, "Oh man, remember those times?"
Do you hope that one day it's not part of your life where you do a podcast and they don't even bring up a kidney thing whatsoever?
Not necessarily, because it is part of who I am, and it's a story I have to share, and the lessons I have learned from it. It's one of the most influential pieces of experience that I've had in my life. So why wouldn't I want to share it? I think that it's important to share what I've learned from it and the perspectives I gotten from it. And
I think it's really important too, because if somebody who's in a situation right now who needs a kidney and is pretty bummed out and depressed and no hope can look at you and just be like, okay, that guy went through hell for a little bit, but now he's doing some amazing things. He's got a podcast, he's directing, he made it out. So there is proof. There's living evidence that this is possible to get through.
Yeah, and I think it's important because when I was going through it, there wasn't a lot of resources like that out there, and I don't know that there is still. So if somebody stumbles upon this and they get, a little bit of, like, I'm not doing anything too crazy, I'm just living my life, but that is the important part. I am living a regular, pretty much regular life. And that's what's important. It's not that I'm directing commercials, doing podcasts. That's pretty cool. I choose to do that. That's fun.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that I get to do that. But more than anything, I get to live a regular life.
Right.
And that's what is important.
So you're healthy, clean bill of health, and you go back in the doctor's office and he calls you boring. And now you really push on with the next chapter in your life and really pursue this creative side in the filmmaking and directing. How does one just jump right back into that? And how long did it take to get you to the level that you are at right now?
About 10 years.
10 years. It's funny because I think a lot of people don't even look at any kind of 10-year goal and think like, if it's going to take me 10 years, I'm not even going to start. I'm going to be too old. What's the point? I think that people would love to hear that. And did you go back to those assisting roles again? And that's so you basically told yourself, I got to start over.
No. Excuse me. I was lucky enough to, right back when Canon, a very popular camera company, had just released a camera that kind of changed the way the industry does things in a lot of ways. They released
5D Mark II?
The 5D Mark II.
Yeah. That was a game changer.
It was a game changer, and I was
Big
lucky
time.
to be able to buy one back then. I had saved some money up, and my dad was like, "Hey, we want to help you get started. We're going to help you invest in this camera." And so really I got into, I did some assisting things to continue learning and to continue making money. And I got to do some cool stuff. I got to go to Whistler. I was telling you earlier, I got to go to California a couple times, lugging around equipment, but I got to shoot some cool stuff, and I got to experience that life and see what it was like. But then I also started shooting, corporate gigs. I was shooting weddings, little music things on the side that like, you're not really making any money, but like you're getting experience and, word of mouth. And that's, I started like everybody. I was doing wedding videos.
Right. That's wild, man. So it sounds like your dad not only is giving up kidneys, but he's investing in your career to help you get to the next level. And I think that's amazing because, a lot of people don't have that luxury, and it's unfortunate for them to not have a supporting family being involved. And I'm not talking just financially. I'm thinking just like all around. I was super lucky to have parents who supported everything that I did. Do you think you'd be in a different spot if your dad was like, Jesse, you need to be a lawyer.
100%.
You need to be a doctor. Do you think you would have tried to be that doctor? Would you still try to be the creative that you are?
No. Without my parents' support, and I've said this to them a few times, every once in a while I sit down and I kind of reflect on this and I kind of get emotional about it. And I say, yeah, I would be nowhere without you guys. First of all, you let me live in your basement until I was 27, 28. I'd saved up enough money to like be able to move out and not have to risk falling back into debt and continue. Like I started my company in the basement of their house, and they let me do that like rent free, which, some people don't have that opportunity. It's I owe everything to my parents, anything about what I am right now.
And I think that's incredible because we were, again, talking before. When I started out in photography, I was watching tutorials, and you'd watch these tutorials, and these guys have these so much expensive gear, top of the line stuff, top of the line cameras, lights, everything. Yeah, they're getting great shots. I want to see the guy who's working with that Home Depot light that I had at the time. When you started out in filmmaking, what was your gear like? Like how does no one starts with thousands of dollars worth of gear.
No.
And before the 5D Mark II, what were you rolling with? And what would you say to a creative that is starting out with $500 worth of gear?
Well, before the 5D, I was in school still. So I was able to kind of like pick from that. But like realistically, I wasn't shooting that much before that. That was kind of my step into shooting when I wasn't in school and I didn't have the school equipment at my disposal. I kind of went from that into getting the 5D and starting to shoot with.
So the 5D was your first camera?
Yeah.
Wow, cool.
Well, I had a Lumix camera before that, but I didn't really back then. That was before Lumix was good. So.
Right. So it's just kind of surrounding yourself in the environment of creative people. Probably rubbed that whole like, you're the average of the 5 people you hang around with. So if you're continually hanging around with creative people, I think that's going to really rub off onto you.
Exactly.
And it sounds like that was a huge help in your path to getting to where you are now.
100%. And I really dove into it and like did the whole, I was like a Swiss Army knife back then. I wanted to learn how to edit, so I started editing. I wanted to learn how to shoot, so I started shooting. Like I kind of, just by process of elimination, I was directing and DPing things just because I was kind of doing it all. That's kind of how I got a feel for a lot of parts of the industry. I was producing a lot of my own stuff. I learned how to like budget things properly, or maybe not because I never budgeted things too high enough. So I ended up getting ripped off a bunch of times. But you really get a sense for that stuff, which is very important. A lot of people kind of get into it being like, I want to be a director, and maybe that works for you, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Everybody's got a different path, but I think it's incredibly important to learn the various areas of the industry that you're getting into. It's important.
You know what? I agree 100%. I always tell people that you should outsource the things you don't like to do, but know how to do them. Yeah. Because this way you'll be able to more effectively communicate with your director, with the producers, with all these other people. And I did that to the point where there was one profession I couldn't effectively communicate with, and that was the makeup artist.
Right.
So I went and took a makeup class in night school.
Wow.
Just so I could learn the terms and everything and how I can speak to, instead of like, can you make that darker? Can you smudge that? And they'd be looking at me like, are you crazy?
Yeah.
So I think it's important to know everything, not to always do it, but just to know how to do it.
Sure. Yeah.
Because those people are better at, I mean, I can direct a video, but you can professionally direct a video.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, I'll say I'm still learning, but yeah.
And I think, well, tell me about that. Like, do you ever stop wanting to learn more?
No.
And
The minute you stop wanting to learn more, progress in the craft that you've chosen to do that you love, then you're standing still.
right.
You're done.
I totally agree with that. And then one day I see, so people don't know, Jesse and I are Facebook friends, and we have kind of communicated through Facebook for the past 8 years, 7
Something like
years
that, yeah.
or something like that. Not really knowing each other that well. And one day I see an ad pop up with John Tavares in it,
Yeah.
sleeping on a mattress that you directed. And I'm like, man, this guy's doing awesome things. Do you ever get starstruck from the people that you deal with?
That one was interesting because, I'm a Leaf fan to the core.
Yeah.
Grew up watching the Leafs. I wasn't starstruck necessarily because of who he was. And I knew my role kind of in there, and I just had to it was, if anything, the thing that got to me was knowing how much older I was than him, and
right.
how much more rich he was than
He's making
was.
$11.5 million a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting.
But you know what? I don't know. For me, I'm kind of I can be an awkward person at times. Sometimes struggle socially with conversation at times. I'm sure lots of people look at me over in the corner of a party being like, who's that guy? But when I'm in that setting, and that is I just feel at home there. I just don't think about things. I
Yeah.
just do. And it's...
So you weren't nervous to tell him what to do?
No.
I feel like he's the type of guy that would be cool with it. Was he? He seems like a chill dude.
He's chill.
Yeah.
Dude, he sat in a bed for 3 hours.
3 hours
Yeah,
on the ice.
he's chill.
Amazing.
Yeah. He was super nice. He was very easy to work with. He, some athletes are, tough, not great actors, and that's fine. But he, I don't know if you've seen the spot, he wasn't all that bad. He sold it. So it was good.
And you've been doing a lot of healthcare related content videos. Do you feel like you've gravitated towards that because of your situation?
100%.
And do you feel like it's just naturally happened, or you've wanted to go to that way on purpose?
Probably a little bit of both, but I think that I've let my producers know at my production company that I do want to do those things. I think there's a need for them. Sick Kids is blown up really huge this year, but my style is I do like to find those emotional moments that people can connect with, and so anytime that they get boards or a script coming in that is along those lines, they usually send it my way and say,
you feel like
hey,
are you getting the job because they know about what you've went through?
No, but I will say that in all my treatments, it is definitely something that helps sell it through. I usually open it being like, I can relate to this, and this is why it's very important to me that I do this job.
Yeah. Is it more satisfying to do a job like that or to do a job with a professional athlete?
No, I like the healthcare stuff. The professional athlete one, Casper's a big company. Tavares is, a legend, and it was great to meet him, and I love the Leafs, and it's just an all around cool experience. And the spot turned out great, and I'm very proud of it. But for me, usually the healthcare ones, the budgets aren't that huge. It's more of like a PSA style thing. It's much more collaborative, where everybody, the creative agency on board is like, oh, they're donating a bunch of stuff, and my production company is donating a bunch of resources. Everybody that's coming on board is there for a reason, and they're,
Right.
they want to put in the work. They want to make sure, they understand why we're doing it. I heard, my gaffer once was like, oh, anything for the kids. They understand the importance of doing these things. And if they do happen to know my story, I think that it helps them understand why I'm so passionate about doing it. And so it's, they are great team players. I will say, because I'm always concerned that in doing these things and talking about my experiences, I don't want people to be like, oh, look at this guy does one commercial that, I haven't even done anything big by commercial standards. Of the work it's been a gradual progression. I've seen my career progressed a little bit. And I'm happy with that. I'm proud of some of the work that I've done. Some of the things I'm not so proud of. That's natural. But one thing I want to get across is like, I don't view myself as some like big wig, like
big shot director.
That's not it.
Yeah.
It's that like, that's kind of my worst fear. Like I am just like anybody else, no matter where they are in their careers in the industry. Like I will talk to everybody.
Well, you know what? I also have that fear in my life, but I truly believe that how humble you are and genuine you are comes across in the way you say things, and that people can really pick up on people who are, bragging about their lives and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this wouldn't exist, us doing this right now, if I didn't mention it.
Yeah.
You would never, hey Jay, I want to tell my story. Do you think you can interview me?
Yeah.
I know that would never happen. I know that you would never do that. But I think it's important that, people, I do think people realize how genuine you are and how much you love doing what you do.
Mm-hmm. And
it comes across on how the end product as well. Like you do some insane work, man.
Thank you.
Like I'm so impressed. For any creatives out there, this could be a 10-hour podcast on your creative side alone, right? From all the things that you've done, all the things that you've learned. And I really appreciate how open you are to wanting to give back and help out and not really share your secrets.
Mm-hmm.
And share your secrets.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it's not really, there's nothing to be secretive about. I wouldn't be anywhere close to where I am if people didn't do the same for me. But
also I think it's important that I think it's important to acknowledge your successes. I was reading lately about, the idea of that you shouldn't live in your failures, but you should live in your successes, and not like, wear a shirt. I met John Tavares, right?
He did give me a hockey stick.
Oh, hey. But the idea that, it's okay to talk about things that you've done in the past,
Mm-hmm.
Because that, kind of enters your subconscious and the idea that was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I want more successes like that. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to work so hard to keep bringing those into my life.
Yes, I agree.
And you go from filming, you go from John Tavares, and then one day, I don't know how this happened, you let me know. You wake up and you're like, let's do a podcast.
Yeah.
How did this whole thing start?
It's weird. I don't know. At the beginning of last year, the beginning of 2018, I wrote like a list of things that I wanted to do this year. One of them was a podcast. Don't know why. Just thought it was an interesting medium. Not even that huge into listening to podcasts. There's like 3 or 4 that I listen to, not even regularly. When I do listen to them, I enjoy them. It was just something I wanted to do, but I didn't really have a direction on how to do it. I didn't want to make the investment. I have this issue, like if I'm going to do something, I want to do it the best I can. I'm not going to just talk into my iPhone, record it, and post that, right? So until I was ready to make the investment, know exactly how I want to do it, get the camera set up, the light, the good microphones, and learn how to edit everything, I wasn't going to do it. And
how did you learn that part?
Just did it.
YouTube?
Yeah.
Trial and error?
Yeah, like I knew that, I researched these, and a lot of well-known podcasters and broadcasters, they use these mics. They're foolproof. And so I just wanted to go that way. And I kind of locked into a direction of what I wanted to do with it. I wanted to, taking a little bit of inspiration from what I've been through and how that defined my life, not defined my life, but like, put me on a certain direction, the path I went down. But that was what it was. I wanted to explore the various paths that people took in their lives, how they got to where they are, whatever it is that they're doing. It's not solely defined on talking to the most interesting, successful people, whatever it may be. Although I will say that I do enjoy talking to people that are doing interesting things. I think that there's, not really big on talking to, hey man, why do you play video games all day? Cool. Tell me how you got there. If that's what you do, no offense. Cool. Do your thing. But in doing this and talking to more people, the more people I talk to, I realize, wow, our experiences are so different, but they're so similar. I don't know why it is. I can take something from what you're saying and relate to it and apply that to my life. And that the more I did that, the more I realized, oh, this is what the podcast is. I'm doing it to learn for myself,
Right.
but also hopefully the people that are listening to it, watching it, whatever it may be, they are taking two different experiences from the two people that are talking about God knows what and being like, whoa, I kind of did something like that. I kind of know what they're saying. It's kind of like when I did this, and they apply that to their life and they learn and they keep moving forward, whatever direction they're going.
So specifically, you've interviewed a ton of guests for, your season. Well, this is now season 2 of the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy, man. Congrats.
Thank you.
What specifically things, did you learn from all the different guests that you had on? Because there is a wide variety of people that were on there.
It's interesting because a lot of the people I've had are in a certain age group, and so we're all kind of at a similar place in our lives. And different, everybody has different careers, everybody has different aspirations. But the thing that I've learned the most, the thing that I bring up in conversation now, aside from the podcast when I'm talking to other people about other things in life, is, and this is probably one of my favorite sayings now, is it's a long game. And what I mean by that is everything takes time, and you have to learn to enjoy that process of it taking time. Sure, you can rush through it and force things to happen quicker. And if that's who you are, all the power to you. You're going to be more successful than I am. But what I found in talking to people and how they learn things and how they apply things to where they are now is it's taken them time to get there. And looking back on those lessons that they've had over time has really defined who they are and where they are. And that's cool.
The journey is the best part of it.
It's the best part of it.
And speaking of that, the podcast you did with your cousin, you guys briefly talked about how timing is everything, and you touched on that a little bit. But I would love to hear more your definition of what timing is everything kind of means.
Yeah, it's in many ways it's circumstantial. Like it could mean like, oh, you just happen to be at the same restaurant as so-and-so investor. And
do you believe something like that is a coincidence? Or is that the law of attraction at its finest? Or some people
probably
fate?
A little bit of both. You can make the decision to to show up there if you know they're going to be there, or, law of attraction. A lot of people believe that. And I think that there's something to say about the law of attraction. Putting positive vibes out there as much as you can is going to make your life better. Maybe not in the way that you see it or want it to, but it will. So timing is everything is, I think what I realized is it's not as simple as it sounds. So I've kind of realized that I have this theory that everything takes about 2 years to kind of come back around, whether that be you meet somebody that you maybe want to work with at some point and you don't hear anything, you don't talk to them for 2 years, but all of a sudden 2 years later, that connection kind of comes back around. That has happened to me countless of times. Like you just think that, oh, I guess that, just isn't going to happen. And then out of nowhere, you are doing something. But then also just, it has to be the right time in your life. Like you have to be ready for things to happen. So
dude, exactly. When you were saying, you're at that restaurant, you just stumble, this producer's there all of a sudden, this guy's there. I really believe that there's a lot of luck that goes into that. But if you're not ready for that, when your opportunity comes, you've wasted that chance, right?
Well, yeah, think about it this way. Like you're an aspiring photographer, for example, and it's part of your job to know who these heavy hitter producers are or whatever it may be. But if you go up to, you have this opportunity to go up to this producer and be like, hey man, like I'm a photographer too, like come check out my work, but your work's not there yet. You're not ready for it. The timing is not right. You're probably shooting yourself in the foot.
Dude, I agree. And I think that what you're doing with this podcast is unique. It's tough to say unique and podcast in the same sentence because do you get that a lot? Oh, like everyone starts a podcast.
It's honestly, it hasn't come my way. But something that has, because people that have podcasts that I listen to or watch or whatever it may be have commented being like, oh yeah, we're starting podcasts because we're living and breathing humans and that's what you do.
Yeah.
And I think that actually put me in a bit of a funk or a rut in the last couple of months because I saw that, and I, as much as I laughed at that and I was like, it's so true, I was kind of like, crap, am I one of those people?
Well, what I get from your podcast is that you are using, and you probably did this subconsciously, everything you've learned up to this point and put it into a platform and using this as a vehicle to spread information, all good stuff. And you've taken your time as in your health scare and taking that human element from it and talking to people who are emotional people who have went through some crazy things. And what's so fascinating to me is the creative element you're putting into this podcast. Those 1 minute teasers that are like super professional video that I personally, I'm like, why is he doing that? Like, that's got to be a ton of work. He could just release this tomorrow, but now he's got to go shoot and this and that.
Yep.
But I think that's what's differentiating you from other podcasts is nobody's doing that. And you're adding a cinematic element to this and using your creative side to do it. But like, how does that idea enter your mind?
I think that was accidental. Like that came naturally. Kind of like I like to create videos. That's what I do. And so it just kind of, that part of it kind of came out naturally, creating these trailers. But like, if I'm being completely transparent and honest, every time I'm doing an episode or about to release it, I think to myself, I could just release this. And just be done with it. But
dude, those videos you created for the episodes I was on were fantastic.
Thank you.
Like people love them, and all the ones that you post, I think, man, this guy's doing something awesome right here.
It's I do enjoy that process of it because it gets to it's like you said, it is more than just us sitting and talking and leaving it at that. You can get something from that. That's cool. But I think. Like you said, the vehicle for getting that out there right now, and social media is such a big thing. I think it's cool, and I try to do my best to come out to show where these people, make it look like their life, be where they, live or work or whatever it may be. I never, I've seen people where they'll just take people on the street and just film a few things of them walking around. I want to get to, if I'm going to show them, let's see what they're all about,
right.
And be in their location, in their zone. So,
well, I've learned a ton from the podcast that you've done.
Thank you.
So thank you. Do you hope to be a face to have people sign up for the organ donor?
Yeah. I think it's such an important thing that needs to be done.
Why do you think people don't? I
never
understood it.
I honestly don't know, and I don't particularly like getting involved in I know there's some religious
right okay
attributes to it. If you're just kind of like, no, if I don't want to do that, then you're a dick. So whatever.
Yeah.
But my donor said it once. You don't need to take them with you when you go.
Right.
They serve no purpose once you're dead.
People get cremated anyways.
Yeah. Like I don't have a kidney to donate, but like you can take all the rest of my stuff. Like I'm happy to help as much as I can.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Amazing, man.
Yeah. They don't have the physical donor cards anymore, but you can do it online. I'm not sure of the website, but I will put it in the show notes.
There you go.
Sign up for it. Otherwise I will find you, call you out.
Show me your license.
Yeah.
All right. On that note, maybe we should cut this. We've talked for a while.
We've talked for a while, but it's been good.